And welcome back to Monster Minis. I've seen a lot of videos out on YouTube about how to speed paint and slap chop and all these different methods to paint an army quickly. And a lot of them revolve around, the paint and dip method from Army Painter or the contrast paints from Games Workshop. I wanted to give you another option. Today we're going to speed paint with an airbrush. 3 squads of Star Wars Legion Rebel Troopers. 21 models in total. Now these Rebel Troopers are going to be cannon fodder in my Star Wars Legion games. They're certainly not going to be submitted for any painting competitions, but they need to look good on the tabletop. So I want to get 21 models painted as fast as possible, preferably in a weekend. So the overall plan for these guys is to do an airbrush modulation of a variation of a Russian green from Ammo of Mig, get all the colors where I want them, and then come back in, pick up some of the details, hit it with a wash, base them, and get them on the table. The straight up Russian armor green, while I love it from Ammo, wasn't exactly the color I wanted for this Endor themed army. So I used this dark green from Vallejo to tint the Russian green a little bit darker, a little more olive on the base coat. And then with each subsequent modulation layer, we're just going to come up brighter with the next level of Ammo's Russian modulation set. Using Vallejo's Flow Improver with each airbrush layer so that it goes on nice and thin, mixing each color right in the airbrush pot so that there's a little bit of the previous color left over to help with the blend. Also with each layer going up, going to mix in some of this yellow from Ammo just to give it a little bit different flavor. The trick to speed painting is to do them in an assembly line. Do all your colors in one run. The goal here will be to get all the deep colors in, all the midtones, and all the highlights with the airbrush, and then come back in over the top with really thin glazes to paint the details so that that underlying modulation will show through, and the glaze that goes over on the detail will take advantage of the work we've already done with the airbrush. Each subsequent layer after the base coat will be sprayed from above so that each of the highest points of the model will get the highlight. The 3 non-humans that came with the set, I wanted to do a really striking contrasting color to the rest of the troopers. So I went with a white on their head first as a base coat so that the blue that's going to come in after will be nice and striking and pure. To paint the human skin, I'm going to be using a couple different colors from Ammo's figure range and their flesh tone set. I'm just going to get these out on the wet palette and then mix them here and there to get different variations in the skin for each of the troopers. The nice thing about the wet palette on this step is that you can make whatever color you want by just grabbing a little bit of the dark or a little bit of the light and just mixing it right on the palette. All right, for their backpacks and their pouches and other little details, I'm going to be using Secret Weapon Miniatures Algae acrylic wash and their Baby Poop acrylic wash. They don't have a ton of pigment to them, so they should respect the work that I've done with the airbrush to show the highlights and the midtones, even though we're just changing the overall temperature of the color. I really liked how the wet palette just became an absolute mess by the end of this session. It was wonderful because I could literally have whatever color I wanted. It allowed for unlimited variation in each of their different pouches and backpacks and ammo belts to where even though they were all painted at the same time, they all had unique differences. And it was one of the things I really liked about this Rebel squad. I mean, it's not an Imperial unit. The Rebels are a ragtag bunch. They're putting together equipment from wherever they can find it. So I thought it was more authentic that all of their equipment wasn't uniform. I'm going to be using Secret Weapon Miniatures Blue to paint the heads of the non-humans. My favorite step in the process is always the enamel wash. Using Ammo's dark brown wash for green vehicles, since these guys are all in a green camo. I ended up making 3 different consistencies of this wash for this step. I got the aluminum palette out and had filled each well with different thinned amounts of this wash so that certain troopers could get a heavier wash and get a heavier look, and other ones I could go a little bit lighter and just continue to add variation to the model, playing off of the work that's already been done with the airbrush. I also didn't mind going a little heavier with this and letting it really sit down into the nooks and crannies. It's one of those happy accidents where I threw it on there and it sat down in there and it kind of looked like a camouflage, and I loved it. So I left it. I painted all of their weapons black off camera as a base coat for the upcoming dry brush effect. Going to be using Ammo's silver from their metal acrylic range and dry brushing the edges of their backpacks to give it a chipped and worn appearance, and then also dry brushing their weapons to give them that gunmetal look. I really like the look of a black weapon dry brushed with a lighter color. I feel like that is just a more fun gunmetal look. It may not be as authentic, but I just like how it looks. If you were really in a rush, you probably wouldn't have to do this step. I did it because I'm a recovering Warhammer painter and I just can't help myself but do an edge highlight. So I grabbed the brightest color and just ran it around all of the edges to just give it that much more variation, with the enamel wash sitting down in the recesses and then brightening up the tops of the folds and the edges. I felt like the casts of all of these rebel troopers looked like old men. The eagle-eyed among you will notice that almost every one of them that has a beard has a white beard or a white mustache, and this is most likely the oldest group of rebel troopers serving in the rebellion. I'm going to give everybody a coat of Ammo's Ultra Matte Lucky Varnish, and since this is an Endor-themed army, everybody's going to get Army Painter's Battlefield Grass Green on their base. Since there's 3 distinct squads here that are being painted at the same time, I wanted a way to differentiate them on the tabletop. So I'm going to be using 3 different colored flowers from Gamer's Grass, and each member of that squad is going to get that specific color of flower. And once I had everybody in their black skirt, got started airbrushing the base. I really like airbrushing the outside of bases rather than painting them with a brush. I feel like it just gives a much cleaner, more uniform look. Just using some watered down Elmer's white glue for the basing step. I like to go ahead and go nice and liberal with the grass on the base, and then just knock off the excess into the container. Quick wipe of the rim, and it's good to go. It's ready for flowers. So these Rebel Troopers took me 8 hours in the chair over 2 days because I had to wait for some of the paint to dry. And here are the finished models. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you on the next one.